but the focus has to be on homes that are genuinely affordable for people on lower middle incomes, because even when we're building homes at the moment, they're often not at the right price or the right rent levels for many families. So that's what we need to see come out of this process.
The onus is very much now on local councils. Do you believe that they will do enough to speed up the planning process and to use land that is available to get built on quickly?
I hope so, and there's some encouraging signs from the white paper and the response from some councils to this, but ultimately this is going to be solved by national government, and national government has to step forward. Welcome words and promises today. We have to see that turn into quick delivery for people, because, as you say, this is very much a crisis, and there are millions of families, 11 million renters at the moment, who are wanting something a lot better to call home.
When you travel around the countryside, when you travel around England, you see huge swathes of countryside alongside this housing crisis. No relaxation of the rules in terms of greenbelt land today. Are you disappointed by that?
As you say, there's plenty of places that we could be building. There's plenty of brownfield places that we could be building. We do probably need to be building on a little bit more greenbelt than we are doing. So we might need a little bit more flexibility on that area, and recognising that a lot of greenbelt isn't fields, it's all full scrubland. I'm
going to speak to Gavin Barwell now. What's your key point to him? What's your key question that you haven't seen in this white paper?
I think the key question is, how quickly is this going to deliver, particularly for renting families, in terms of giving them longer tenancies and in terms of either that or genuinely affordable homes being built? OK,
Roger Harding, thank you very much. Well, let's put some of those concerns to the Housing Minister, Gavin Barwell, who joins me now from our Westminster studio. A question then from Shelter on this issue of timescale. You're saying 1 million homes by 2020, but how quickly will you deliver this? A crisis that's happening right now. People are living in dreadful conditions right now.
So the first thing to say is it's great to hear such a warm welcome from such a highly respected charity like Shelter for what we've set out today. But in terms of the level of housing delivery, in 2015-16 we built 190,000 homes. So that's just below the level we need to achieve the 1 million homes ambition. We've got to do much better than that. We've got to step up, and as rightly said, we've got to step up quickly. Long term, the answer is building more homes which will make housing more affordable. It's absolutely right to say that we've also got to do some things right now to help people that are struggling in the market, and the final section of the white paper addresses exactly that.
What are you doing right now then for people who are renting in those conditions? So
first of all, we are taking action on letting agent fees, banning them being charged to tenants. Those are upfront costs that people face in the private rented sector. Secondly, we're taking action to drive out some of the rogue landlords. Because so many people are desperate for housing, they're actually often being forced into the arms of people, disreputable landlords, and we need to sort that out. And thirdly, we're trying to get new people into the private rented sector that can offer much more family-friendly tenancies to give people greater security and hopefully encourage existing landlords to change the way they operate as well. So there is a real package there on renting. There's also help for people that are trying to get onto the housing ladder and own a property. And we need to have a policy that's got something to say for owners and for renters.
Labour says they've seen 7 years of failure. They're now looking at 10. Can you prove the critics wrong and this time you will fix this?
Well, look, I could spend a whole lot of time making some cheap party political points. I could say to you, look, we inherited the lowest level from Labour of house building since the 1920s, and we've increased it significantly. But I don't think that's what your viewers want to hear. The truth is, for 30 years, under governments of both parties, we have not built enough homes in this country. And the Prime Minister down, this government is committed to sort this issue out, because we cannot allow young people in our country to be in a position where they can't afford a secure and decent place to live.
Just one quick question, Gavin Barwell, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Yeah. Quick question on Greenbelt clarification. It will be built on in exceptional circumstances.
That's right.
That is open to debate and negotiation. In your opinion, in your eyes, what is exceptional? What are exceptional circumstances?
So the white paper is very clear about that. What we're saying to councils is it's a decision for you, but if you're going to remove land from the Greenbelt, that should only happen if you've looked at every other option in terms of higher density, in terms of brownfield land, in terms of surplus government land, and you can't do it through those things, then you're allowed to do it, but only in those exceptional circumstances.
Gavin Barwell, many thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Britain is facing nearly a decade more of austerity. That is according to a report today from economic analysts at the Institute for Fiscal Studies. They say it's in the wake of the Brexit vote and if government in future wants to balance the books. Our economics editor, Norina Hertz, is in central London this lunchtime. Norina, a brutal warning there. What is your take on this report?
Well, they painted a very gloomy picture. What they said was that if the government remains committed to balancing the books in the next Parliament, we are going to face 9 more years of austerity. And local authorities are facing over 7% cuts over the next 4 years. We also learnt about the radical shift taking place when it comes to how the government's spending money, its spending priorities. We're going to see money being taken out of policing and put into pensions, money taken out of schools and put into health. When it comes to health, although the lump sum being spent on health is going to go up, by 2020, the government will be spending less per person on health than it was in 2010. Given how expensive new drug treatments are, this is clearly a real concern. In 4 weeks' time, the Chancellor will be delivering his budget. Today's revelations raise serious questions about the priorities and trade-offs that he will have to address.
Norina Hertz, many thanks. A court has heard how in the weeks before a Royal Marine shot dead an injured Taliban fighter. He'd been mentally scarred by the conditions of war. Lawyers have been trying to argue that Alexander Blackman's conviction is a miscarriage of justice. Juliet Bremner is at the Royal Courts of Justice. Juliet, take us through what has happened so far today.
A lot of people will remember this case of Marine A. It's a former Marine, Alexander Blackman, who was convicted and sentenced to life in prison in 2013 when it was decided that he had deliberately shot an injured insurgent at point blank in the chest. Ever since then, his wife Claire has been relentlessly campaigning to try and get that conviction overturned. Today she turned up and she was accompanied by many other former Marines and also retired officers who are supporting her campaign here at the High Court, the Royal Courts of Justice. They must convince the 5 senior judges who are hearing this case that Alexander Blackman was suffering from some kind of mental illness. They've got 3 psychiatrists who say that he had something called adjustment disorder and that this meant that he was severely impaired when he was trying to make any kind of rational judgment. But they've got to prove that this was indeed the case. They've been talking about the harsh conditions they were living in Helmand. They had little support, they claim, from senior officers. He was anyway a man who liked to keep emotions to himself. He saw many of his fellow Marines suffering serious injuries. And they say that this is what led to what happened on that day.
Juliet Bremner, thank you. Still to come, the woman on the walk of her life in honour of her daughter. Before that, President Trump has taken another swipe at the media, this time releasing a list of terror attacks that he claims went underreported. The list of 78 attacks around the world includes some of the worst mass murders in Europe, like the Bataclan shootings in Paris and the lorry attack in Nice. Sally Biddulph has the details.
June 2015, and holidaymakers flee a beach in Tunisia as 38 are gunned down. Later that year, terrified music fans escape from the Bataclan club in Paris as almost 130 people are killed in separate attacks across the city. And 6 weeks ago, 12 died as a truck was driven into a Christmas market in Berlin. Terrorist atrocities which dominated news coverage for weeks and still resonate now. Yet all 3, Tunisia, Paris and Berlin, appear on a list of 78 other attacks which the White House says were executed or inspired by so-called Islamic State and did not receive adequate attention from the Western media. The list was hastily released for clarity after the president addressed military officials last night.
You've seen what happened in Paris and Nice. All over Europe, it's happening. It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported. And in many cases, the very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it.
With in-depth coverage of terror attacks contradicting what the president claimed, his press secretary said it was a question of balance.
I think the president's comments were very clear at the time. He felt as though members of the media don't always cover some of those events to the extent that other events might get covered. That a protest will get blown out of the water, and yet an attack or a foiled attack doesn't necessarily get the same coverage.
Widespread criticism of the list remains, with the media once again at odds with the Trump administration. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
Here in the UK, the backlash against John Bercow speaking out against the president is growing. The Speaker of the House of Commons, who is supposed to be politically neutral, told MPs he was strongly opposed to the president giving an address in Parliament during a state visit. Our political correspondent Emily Morgan is outside the House of Commons this lunchtime. Any sign, Emily, that the pressure is getting to Mr Bercow?
No, it doesn't appear to be. He's already been mocked by a fellow MP in the House of Commons and he seems to have taken it very well. But look, in all seriousness, MPs are still very cross about his intervention yesterday. Critics have called him unwise. They say he is lacking in judgment. Because don't forget, the role of the Speaker is to marshal differing views in the House of Commons, not to voice his own view on very controversial issues. One Conservative backbencher speaks for many, I think, when he says that he has caused great embarrassment.
If he felt that strongly, I think what would have been better would have been for him to have a quiet word with the Prime Minister and say, look, please don't ask me to invite him because I don't want to do so. And that way, at least we would have saved the embarrassment and offence caused to the leader of our closest ally.
Well, Downing Street has simply said that what John Bercow says in Parliament is a matter for Parliament. We will, though, hear from the Lord's Speaker later today. He's the one that issues the invites to heads of state to come and talk in Parliament along with John Bercow. And he yesterday is said to have been very irritated. All eyes will be on whether he makes those views public today.
Emily Morgan, thank you. A price cap is to be introduced on prepaid gas and electricity meters. The energy regulator is imposing the change, which it says will save customers around £80 a year. And scientists funded by Cancer Research UK have found that people who switch from real to e-cigarettes have far fewer cancer-causing substances in their body after 6 months than smokers do. Next, this lunchtime, do you know what your child is doing on the internet? New research suggests the online activities of 6-year-olds are as advanced as 10-year-olds were just 3 years ago. Almost half go online for general browsing. 44% browse their devices in their bedroom, while over a quarter are using social media that's not recommended until children are in their teens. It is a familiar story for parents like Layla, whose children all love their screen time.
My children do have some unsupervised time on the internet. It's very tricky when you've got 3 children to be with all 3 of them at the same time. So it might be that one of them will be sat in their bedroom on their computer playing games or on the internet, whilst I'm with the other one reading or supervising those on the computer. So yes, it does happen.
Let's get some advice from Carolyn Bunting from the website Internet Matters, which carried out the survey. So much to talk about here. Let's start with children using their devices in their bedrooms, presumably, especially at the age of 6. You've got no idea what they're looking at.
I think it's really important for parents to sit down and agree with their children how they should use their devices when they're at home. They should have some rules and a family framework. And I think it's important to remember for parents that you role model your behaviour and your children will learn from that. So if you don't want devices at the dinner table or you don't want them used when you're watching TV, set those ground rules with your children early.
Presumably, even if you are in the same room, it's very difficult unless you're sitting over them to find out what they're doing every minute, every second. What are you supposed to do? They're more internet savvy than we are.
They are often like that. And I think there is some really useful things that parents can use that are freely available for them. So there's lots of parental controls that are offered both on your home broadband that can filter the content that your children might see, and on the devices, so they can only download age-appropriate apps, for example. So we offer a lot of advice about how to set up a device safely. So when you're handing over a connected tablet to a 6-year-old, one of the things we urge parents to do is set them up so that children can stay as safe as possible.
On this issue of social media, it seems quite shocking that young children are on social media. What sort of things, what sort of sites are they on? And what should you be telling your younger children about, you know, approach with caution?
Definitely. I think, you know, obviously with the sort of more traditional social media that as adults we're familiar with, Facebook and Instagram, the minimum age rating is actually 13. So I think you need to consider very carefully as a parent to let your children use that service. And I think if you are going to do that, you do need to sit down and make sure that they're aware they're in an adult environment and they may come across things that is going to be hurtful and upsetting. And I think most importantly, get them to set their privacy settings so they're only sharing with people that they know.
Really important point, Carolyn Bunting. Thank you very much for all that. Thank you. Finally, a mother who lost her 5-year-old daughter to a rare immune disorder is due to complete an incredible journey in her memory today. The Walk of Love for Elizabeth Spencer has taken her mum around the whole coast of Britain. After almost a year travelling, she's finishing back where she started in Dorset, the last seaside she visited with her daughter. Rupert Evelyn has been to meet her.
Nervous, emotional and determined as ever, Natalia Spencer faces the final leg of a difficult journey. Each and every step along the roads and paths have been taken in memory of her 5-year-old daughter Elizabeth. This is a journey born of her mother's love and loss. It's never been about you, has it?
No, it's never been about me. It was always about her. It's her journey.
Yeah.
And she obviously was only 5 years old and she never had a chance to leave any footprint by herself. So I'm the one who do it for her. But it is a her. I always wanted to people know that.
Elizabeth fell ill in December 2015. What initially looked like a chest infection developed quickly into a rare condition that fatally attacked her immune system. Weeks later, driven by the need to do something, Natalia Spencer set off from Durdledore in Dorset. It was the last seaside place she went with Elizabeth before she died. Her 6,000-mile walk of love around the coastline has given her time to reflect, while taking in the furthest reaches of the British mainland. In dreadful conditions last night, we found Natalia plodding along, undeterred by the weather, focused on supporting those who supported her daughter.
I believe I could do it slightly quicker than a year, but I didn't want to rush. Fundraising was my challenge, not walking itself. Walking for me is just my new normal.
More than £100,000 has been banked, and although the walk ends today, you get a sense that her journey isn't finished yet. Rupert Evelyn, ITV News, Dorset.
And that's it this lunchtime. Mary Nightingale will have the ITV Evening News at 6:30. From everyone here for now, bye-bye.